Hello and welcome to the Big Byte Academy Online. In this little session here, I want to talk about what some people call postponement, a process where you delay the final customization until the actual customer demand is present. I'm also leading into the postponement process by talking a little bit about value stream mapping, or as I call it, SAP value stream mapping, which lays out the model, allows you to document the process changes and allows you to document the settings that you have to do in SAP in order to implement such an inventory order interface. I'm assuming that all of you are familiar with the concept of value stream mapping that's very often used to implement lean principles. We're looking at an example here that I put together in an SAP supply chain optimization. This was done so we can look at the process in total, and you can see, as it's usually done in value stream mapping, a material flow that usually goes from the vendor to the supplier, from the left to the right, from upstream to downstream, and on top of it we can see the information flow that flows backward the other direction. And now we can make this an SAP value stream by adding SAP specific information onto it. But before that, we wanted to have a quick look at the individual components that we can lay out in this SAP value stream. And there's first, in the information flow, we can detail the information about sales and operations planning and MRP. We can add boxes for purchasing and sales, and we can maintain information about these functions later on. There's boxes about scheduling and leveling and sequencing, capacity planning. And we can also maintain information about the actual execution, the confirmations to the production or process orders, and the integration with MII. So as we're doing this, we're adding SAP-specific and process-specific information onto the value stream. You can see here this a finished value stream. Actually, that's a living document, but a fairly complex value stream map here with information about the individual work centers, the individual material numbers, inventory points, inventory order points, scheduling strategies, planning strategies in MRP or in SNOP, and even we have some customizing detail that's maintained here as well. And once all the detail has been maintained, you can sit down with your project team and you can talk about issues, a wish list. You can put together a wish list and you can identify improvement opportunities and activities. As an alternative, you could also put together a Lego model that represents your production lines, for example. What we're looking at here is the raw materials warehouse to the right, flows into a pre-product that runs through a continuous oven, and then we identify the bottleneck here and move all the way up to the packaging line. You can identify the various inventory points. You can identify the bottleneck workstation and put the value stream right on top of the picture of the photograph. What we see very often is the production scheduling takes place, and the signal for the production schedule is sent to every level of the bill of material. That is a very cumbersome process and does not support flow or a pull principle. A much better way to execute this would be to find the pacemaker workstation, drive the production schedule via a sequencing schedule onto the pacemaker operation that usually is the bottleneck, and then pushing raw material through the process onto an inventory that you have in front of the packaging line, and then the customers can pull from that inventory. This is actually the postponement process in a nutshell, and it introduces the creation of an inventory order interface where to, in this case, to the left, to the downstream side of the inventory order interface, you have your orders coming in and you're pulling, and to the upstream side, in this case to the right side of the inventory order interface, you're pushing inventory into into the inventory, and that's the inventory side of the I/O interface. So let's look at an example. We're looking at a current state value stream map for a factory that is driven completely by a forecast on the finished goods, and the entire material process is a push system, but we want to change that and therefore introduce an inventory order interface right to the downstream side of the Kanban loop, the Kanban control cycle that we can see there. So what we're going to do is we're going to push upstream from the upstream side towards the Kanban control cycle. We're going to push inventory. We hold it in that Kanban supermarket, and then as customer orders come in, we're going to pull from that inventory and pull through the operations packaging as well as customization. Let me explain the advantages of a postponement process or the introduction of an inventory order interface with an example. What we're looking at here is typical bulk processing operations where we're taking some raw materials, we're mixing or processing them into semi-finished product, and then we're taking that bulk material that's been processed or manufactured, and we're going through a packaging operation that makes out of that bulk material many different finished products. In this example, we're assuming that the bulk processing has a lead time of about 6 weeks, whereas the packaging is done on a line that has ample capacity, and the packaging itself doesn't take more than 1 day. If you do what a lot of companies do using SAP, then you're creating a forecast, maybe inside of SAP, maybe outside of SAP. But a lot of companies that I see, they take that forecast out of planning, they put it right into demand management or MRP, and they put it on the finished goods. So they have an individual forecast for every finished goods part and that planned demand is then propagated throughout the bill of material, through the semi-finished product, all the way to the raw materials. Those companies then purchase the raw materials based on that plan and the propagated demand throughout the bill of material, the planned demand. They take those raw materials and they process the raw materials into semi-finished products. And from the semi-finished product, they take the demand, the planned demand, the forecast on the finished products, and they start emptying that bulk material and put it right into the finished goods and store the inventory as it was planned according to a forecast in the finished goods warehouse. So now you end up with inventory, finished goods inventory of a very specific type. And you're losing actually a lot of flexibility. For example, as the customer orders come in, there might be some customers that all of a sudden want a lot more of that material that you were planning in smaller quantities, and they do not pick up other materials that you were actually offering. And then there's that customer who wants something very customized and wants something specific done to the finished product. There's no way you can react or being agile to those specific customer demands now anymore. On the other hand, you could introduce that inventory order interface right in front of the packaging line, meaning that you would manufacture intermediate product bulk material, but you would leave it right there in front of the packaging line and wait for the actual orders to come in and customize the bulk to what the customer actually demands. That is demand-oriented manufacturing. Now, for that to work, we would have to translate the forecast for the finished products onto the bulk level. That translation cannot take place in MRP through the bill of material. That translation has to happen in sales and operations planning, and it really doesn't matter whether you do that in SAP, which would pose some other advantages. But if you do it in an external system, just make sure you're translating the forecast onto the bulk material before you hand it over into MRP. And that planned demand on the bulk material, those forecasts on the bulk materials would drive the bulk processing, the process or production orders to transform the raw materials into bulk material and keep it in inventory right in front of the packaging line. This, of course, results in a much more flexible demand-driven execution of the packaging line, because if not, the customer comes with very specific requests. You can flexibly finish up the operation as the customer demands it. And if nothing is going out, if the customer doesn't want a specific finished product, then you're just leaving the inventory in front of the packaging line and don't do anything. This kind of processing adheres to the principles, the lean principles of avoiding the waste of overproduction. You're keeping the finished goods inventory to an absolute minimum. You do have inventory of the bulk material, but in many cases the variety of finished products is much higher than the variety of bulk. That increases forecast accuracy, and the only trade-off that you're having here is that the customer has to wait 1 day longer because you don't have the finished product in inventory. You're packaging it up to the customer specific requirement, which poses another advantage, of course. As mentioned before, you're gaining a lot of agility, flexibility in the process. You can customize very specifically to any customer demand, and as mentioned before, the trade-off is that the customer lead time is extended by that 1 day that it takes to run the product from the bulk through the packaging line. I hope this presentation helped to get to a better understanding of what postponement can do for you, what the introduction of an inventory order phase interface can do for you, and here's my contact information. Don't hesitate contacting me if you need any more information. Thanks very much.